Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, hello listeners. Welcome to Monday afternoon. It is a lovely day here in suburban Chicago, a bit on the warm side, but I don't know what else you can expect from late August. The temperature is, the cicadas are out, so that's going to be a background sound you're going to hear throughout, that loud buzzing sound. And I'm taking a walk up to the library. It's been my destination of choice the last few weeks. So today I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about some games I've been playing. That's right, it's time for another episode of Shooting from the Hip, Triple Shot. For those of you new to the podcast, Shooting from the Hip, Triple Shot is a segment or an episode where I talk about 3 different games that I've tried for the first time in the recent weeks and talk to you about my impressions of them. These aren't in-depth reviews, as I don't have enough experience with the game to be able to give it an in-depth review, but it is a kind of summary of the kind of game we've been playing lately. So there we are. So I have 3 games to talk about today. The first of which is The Captain is Dead. The Captain is Dead is from J.T. Smith, owner of the Game Crafter, as an aside. And it is a cooperative game of some significant difficulty in which you play essentially the crew of the Starship Enterprise just after you've been attacked by a malevolent alien force and your captain has died. So your job is to deal with a sort of ever-escalating series of problems while simultaneously repairing the jump drive and escaping. So the whole goal of the game is to get away from the enemies, and you do that by handling a variety of different sort of science fictional tasks. It's a fun game. On our first try, we managed to win basically one turn before we absolutely would have lost, just by the way that things were coming out. We didn't really have much leeway, but we did manage to eke out a win. And we were playing on pretty much the easiest mode. I don't think we were on very, very easy, but we were on easy. So if you haven't played the game before, each player takes a role of one of the sort of stereotypical Star Trek type characters. You know, you have your engineer, you have your first officer, you have your medical officer, and each different character has a different thing that they can do really well, kind of like Pandemic. And basically your goal is to manage this ever-escalating series of problems in a way that allows you to win the game. The big challenge for us was keep getting the teleporter working. The game makes it difficult to move around. It uses a lot of your actions to move around the ship, so your goal is to not have to move around that much. And you are saved a lot of actions if you are able to move around using the teleporter. However, the teleporter wasn't working at the beginning of our mission, so as the chief engineer character, I had to spend a significant amount of energy trying to repair the teleporter. And then I got it fixed and it worked for 2 turns and then it broke again. And it's very much a game of, putting your finger in the hole in the well to block the water, and then another hole pops up and you have to cover that one too. But it was interesting. I'm inclined to say I would happily play it again. Being honest though, I don't know how much it's going to get played. It'll be interesting to see whether it's one that comes back out much or whether it kind of sits on the shelf for a year and then I sell it. I wouldn't mind playing it more, but like I said, on first blush, I suspect we're not going to play it a ton. Those sort of danger management co-ops haven't generally been our bag lately. With the exception of Pandemic, we don't tend to play a lot of games like that. So it'll be interesting to see whether having the opportunity to play that, we do continue to play it. But I enjoyed it on the first start. If you haven't seen the game, the art design and components on the game are pretty cool. The characters are these little plastic standees, which is, they're kind of sort of translucent. It's a different material than I've encountered before and kind of nifty. The cards are all nice. The main thing is the art design has this retro feel to it that looks like something out of the 60s. If they made a board game based on classic Trek, that's what it would be like. So, yeah, The Captain is Dead by J.T. Smith, published by AEG and the Game Crafter, and fun. We'll happily play again. The second game I want to talk about, my buddy Paul picked up at a clearance sale. I think it was $5 or something. It was one of those, it was cheap enough that he sort of got it on a whim. It turned out to be an interesting little dexterity game. This is Vampires versus Unicorns. In Vampires versus Unicorns, you play either the vampires or the unicorns, and you get these 5 big tiles for your side that you lay out on the floor. And on your turn, you're going to take a card off your deck and look at it. Most of the cards are just plain throw cards, but some of them allow you to do things like throw 2 cards or pick up some cards or do a couple different things. And what you're going to do is you're going to throw your cards at your opponent's tiles on the floor. Now each tile has like an active side and a failed side or a lost side. And I think they have an injured side and a healthy side and an injured side, and then you remove them. Basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to land your cards on their tiles, and the first person to eliminate the other player's tiles wins. It's a very simple dexterity game. I mean, we had a good time. We played 2 rounds of it or 3 rounds of it over the course of about 15 minutes. It's a cute little game. I mean, honestly, the most attractive thing is the art is fantastic. The vampires have this sort of creepy, old-timey look with sort of like old-timey facial hair. They look like Victorian vampires and almost have an Edward Gorey sensibility to them. If Edward Gorey used kind of fuzzy watercolor black and white instead of his stark lines that he draws with. By contrast, the unicorns, the other side, have this sort of trippy 1970s stretch art. Reminds me a little bit of like Jim Woodring or something. And really colorful, beautiful. So, I mean, this game is just a delight to look at. It's really pretty. As a game, it's very simple, hardly worth mentioning, but it's a cute diversion and the sort of thing that it'd be fun to have around for a short thing. Or if you were to have you could do a tournament with it in a pretty fun way, where you just have a kind of round robin tournament where everybody plays everybody and you record who had the most wins, and then you have a championship game or something. That would be fun. So that is, it's about on the same level as Strike, if you've played Strike, as a very simple game that's easy enough to play, but not very consequential. All right, so that was Vampires versus Unicorns. I regret that I did not look up the designer or the publisher. You can check the show notes at rattleboxgames.com for this episode to find links to the Board Game Geek page, or you could search the Board Game Geek for Vampires versus Unicorns. All right, the third game I want to talk about, this was a personal victory to get this played, and I'm super happy to be able to talk about it, and that is Sidereal Confluence, Trading and Negotiation in the Elysium Quadrant. Whoo, doggies, was this a good time. So I started about 2 weeks out. I texted a bunch of people and said, hey, are you interested in playing this game? And I got enough people to agree to play it. I sent everybody their faction sheets and had them read about their faction ahead of time. And then I set the game up before everybody got there. And then when everybody got there, I kind of explained the game one more time, and then we played. There was a little bit of confusion about the last round. That was my fault almost entirely. But overall, it was super fun. It took about 3 hours. It was very intense in terms of, it took a lot of mental energy to play the game. So basically what it is you get a faction, and your faction has a number of economic engines that go on the board in front of you. You start with a certain batch of resources, and then there's a trading phase. And in the trading phase, you're allowed to make straight up trades of 1 cube for another or a couple cubes for another. There's a bunch of different kinds of cubes. You get this card that shows you the economic value of each of the cubes. You have a general idea about it. But then you also could trade, you have these, like I said, you have these economic engines that you have, and you could trade use of the economic engine with another player instead of trading cubes. Or you could trade a promise for a future thing. Often the trades I was making involved, we do a thing and you keep some of it and give me some. In particular, I was playing these space whales who, their big deal is that they have interest engines. So if you put in 5 of a thing, you get 8 out. And I am not allowed to run them. So I have to get other people to run them. So I had early in the game, I was just trying to get people to borrow them and pay me 1 cube or something. Toward later in the game, when I was making a deal with somebody, I'll make a deal with you, but also here's this engine and 5 cubes. You run it and then give me back everything that's in it. So as part of the deal, they run this thing for me, which doesn't cost them anything, but helps me. So there are other people who gain benefit by getting lots of colonies. There are other people who get lots of ships. There are other people who do this or that. Each race has its own specialty and its own thing that it can do. And the trading sequence is really fun. Basically, we get to the trading round and we go start, and you can start a timer. It suggests that you spend about 10 minutes trading, or not too much more than that. And people can make trades if they feel like it, and you're wheeling and dealing. You're allowed to make multi-directional trades, and you're not allowed to go back on anything you've said. So if you make a deal, you have to follow through on it. And it's really neat. And we got to the end of the game, and the point spread was relatively restrained. I think the lowest scoring people had in the high 20s or low 30s for score, and the winner had low 40s. So not a blowout by any means, but really compelling as a game. Really interesting. Definitely an event game. Takes a lot of effort to get played, but the kind of thing that I would really enjoy playing again. One thing about, if I'm willing to be more of a teacher, when I was setting it up, I had at least 4 people come by and say, "Oh, do you have any spots open?" Like, people really wanted to give it a try. So I think I could in future just kind of bring it and set it up and let the first 5 people who said they want to play. I think that would work pretty well. The graphic design and art works pretty well. I mean, there's a lot to keep track of, but that's not that surprising. And it was super fun. I'm really glad I got to play it. I'm glad to have it in my collection. It's definitely going to be a game I try to get out, like when I go to a con, or when I have a chance to get a lot of people together in a space. That it's the sort of game that I think would be really fun to tackle again and play a few times. Highly recommended. Really fun if you get a chance to try it. Sidereal Confluence, Trading and Negotiation in the Elysium Quadrant. Big winner for me, as I kind of suspected it would be. So, those are the 3 games that I've tried recently: Captain is Dead, Vampires vs. Unicorns, and Sidereal Confluence. What have you been playing lately, listeners? It's been a little while since I've asked, so I'm keen to hear. Let me know by going over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and letting me know. Put it in the comments, or put it in the forum there. You could also email me directly, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or send me a direct message through Board Game Geek. My username there is wombat929. I also play lots of asynchronous games, so you could find me on Board Game Arena, Boitaju, or Yukata, playing asynchronous games under the username wombat929. I've played with a number of listeners. In particular, I'll say hello to Wes, because Wes joined me for the game of Sidereal Confluence. Wes is an Illinois local who occasionally comes to Toggle Gaming, and so it's not surprising that he decided to join for the delightful game of trading and negotiation. Other regulars that I've mentioned that I played with, my design partner Rob was playing, my buddy Paul, who I've mentioned a few times. Also, Jason Brooks, the designer of the game Legacies over on that was on Kickstarter last year, was playing as well. So really fun time with lots of people that have appeared in the podcast before, at least been mentioned before. So what have you been playing? Do let me know. Have you played Sidereal Confluence or either of the other games I talked about today? What do you think of them? Thanks for joining me today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.